One of the most common misconceptions about Bigfoot is that it is an individual, but it's not true. They clearly reproduce as any normal animal would. And right here, this is the proof of that. We have a larger one down below and a juvenile up in a tree.
From being hunted in the dead of night by something not human to reaching for his gun in sheer terror, this is the chilling story of a police officer's face-to-face encounter with Bigfoot. On November 13, 1983, in the dense and unforgiving forests of northern Michigan, Sean Ritz, a young police officer with nearly 5 years of service behind him, found himself in the most unforgettable and unsettling experience of his life. Sean had traveled from Arizona to his family's cabin in Glenny, Michigan, a place built by his father and uncle after World War II. Here, generations of memories had been carved into the wood and soil. Every November, the family returned for hunting season, a ritual that blended tradition with the isolation of the wilderness. This time, Sean arrived early, planning to spend a week fishing and bow hunting before rifle season began. And because he was the first to reach the cabin, he had to cut wood, clear the grounds, and prepare the place for the others. It was a lonely responsibility in a forest so thick with pine and spruce that even the wind seemed to be swallowed by it.
An old newspaper report from 1892 reports a large, upright being with thick hair covering its head and shoulders. But the word Sasquatch didn't exist then. They chose to call it the wood booger.
At first, nothing felt unusual. The air carried the sharp scent of pine and the damp musk of fallen leaves. The ground was soaked with November rain, and everything seemed perfectly normal. But slowly and quietly, a change came over the forest. It was not a sound or a smell that marked it, but something deeper, something biological. Sean began to feel that he was being watched, not by another hunter or by a deer creeping through the brush, but by something unseen, something heavy, something intelligent. This feeling grew in waves, making the hair on the back of his neck rise whenever he turned away from the tree line. It was as though unseen eyes shifted with him, always watching while hiding in the trees, always out of reach. With the training of a police officer, Sean trusted his instincts, and he knew that this was no baseless paranoia. He had been around predators before, both animal and human, and he had learned to recognize the silent chemical warnings the body gave when danger drew near. And now, those warnings screamed through him, even as the forest appeared calm. For 3 days, this presence lingered, always just beyond sight, never breaking cover, never leaving tracks he could find, as if the forest itself held its breath around him. He searched for signs, listened for movement, but the woods remained silent. No branches snapped, no noise in the bushes, only that suffocating sense that something immense and hidden was nearby, observing him with a patience that was almost deliberate. To make matters worse, the cabin sat 4.5 miles off the main road, along an old fire lane swallowed by woods, and only a handful of other cabins existed between his and the town. This made the half-acre of clearing feel like an island surrounded by a sea of trees.
People reported large, scary monsters. They would actually stalk them in their home. The family that was reporting these sightings believed that the Sasquatch killed their German shepherd by snapping its neck. The police themselves came to the conclusion that this was in fact a credible report of something incredible happening.
Each night, the isolation pressed down harder, the forest so dense he could not see more than a few feet past the first line of trunks. And the knowledge that something was there yet refusing to show itself filled his gut with unease. By the third day, Sean turned to chores to distract himself, cutting firewood, checking the cabin, and finally stepping out to the shooting range to fire his rifle and pistol. Because routine felt safer than silence. He lined up his targets and began firing, the cracks of the gunshots echoing through the trees, each one a declaration that he was not defenseless. Yet with each shot, the feeling of being observed only grew sharper, as though the noise had stirred whatever was hidden, calling it closer rather than driving it away. Suddenly, the air itself felt charged and heavy. Even as he steadied his rifle for another shot, Sean could not shake the sense that he was no longer alone in that clearing. Something big and dark stood cloaked by the trees, watching him with eyes that carried neither fear nor curiosity, but something far more ancient and deliberate. And what came next would shatter the fragile line between disbelief and reality, because the moment he finally saw what it would forever etch November 1983 into his memory. Fear, instinct, and paranoia. With a Glock 20, a 10mm pistol Sean always kept ready, he remembered firing a full magazine into the dense trees, his shots cutting through the stillness of the forest. He was only about 25 yards out, not far compared to the long 30-yard shots he had taken on deer before, but this wasn't hunting. It was something else entirely. As the shots rang out, he expected the sound of retreat, the brush cracking, anything to show that something had moved. But he got nothing. Silence. But when he stopped and began to pack up his things, the silence broke with a sound that froze him where he stood. It was not the cry of an animal. It was a long, breathy moan, drawn out as if it came from deep within a chest, and it ended with a sharp F sound that echoed unnaturally through the trees.
There's a retired cryptolinguist from the US Navy. He's realized that there are phonemic patterns that repeat in the sounds. Those are words. Sasquatches might be talking to one another.
Sean had shot at black bears in those woods. He had seen their tracks, their scat, but rarely the animals themselves. His first thought was bear, but no bear made sounds like that, not with the kind of shape at the end that required lips. He told himself to focus, to keep moving, but his body was tense, every nerve alert. Halfway back to the cabin, just 40 or 50 feet away, the sound returned. This time it came from another side, as if something had circled him in the woods. Knowing that he was in danger, his mind switched into the investigative mode of a cop. Maybe it was someone messing with him, maybe teenagers sneaking around the forest. He yelled out, his voice sharp with anger, warning whoever was there that things would not end well if they didn't show themselves. Then the footsteps began. Heavy, deliberate, crashing through the brush in a way no deer or bear ever moved. Animals moved with balance, with rhythm, almost gliding through the woods. These steps were uneven, heavy, and human-like. Boots, he thought. Hunting boots like his own. It had to be people. It had to be something explainable. Yet the sound grew fainter, drifting away into silence, leaving him more unsettled than before. Back at the cabin, he tried to shake it off. He made lunch, sat down, even dozed off for a moment, only to be awakened by a sudden boom that shook the walls. It wasn't a gunshot, it wasn't thunder, it was something else. For a moment, he thought of the jets that sometimes flew low from Muskota, maybe breaking through the river valley, creating a sharp crack of sound. But something in his gut told him this was different. Strange events were stacking one after another, and irritation started mixing with fear. Later, needing to use the restroom, he stepped outside to the outhouse behind the cabin. The sun was sinking, and the clearing around him was falling into that gray November light that vanished fast into blackness. As he finished, the sound came again. That same deep, breathy hoof rolling through the woods with an edge of human tone that no wild animal could make.
There have been cases of Sasquatches going after humans as a food source. One example was written about by Teddy Roosevelt in his book, The Wilderness Hunter.
It felt like he was being toyed with, stalked by something just outside the edges of sight. He went back inside, his patience gone, pouring himself coffee at the small table while his mind moved in circles, trying to explain what was happening. Nothing fit. He was rattled, not just by the sound, but by the certainty that whatever it was intelligent enough to move with him, to stalk him, to stay just out of reach. With darkness coming as the sun set, Sean knew deep down that whatever was out there wasn't finished yet. The face-off. Sean went back inside the cabin to prepare a simple dinner. He got a little too comfortable, but soon enough, nature called. The kind of natural biological distress call that one cannot ignore, and so he had to step outside again to respond. This forced him to cross the short stretch between the back porch and the outhouse that faced the low wetland behind the property. The land was no true swamp, yet the ground there was always damp, the kind that pulled at your boots and swallowed them in black, silty mud if you went too deep. It was the kind of place you avoided unless absolutely necessary, the kind of place that already carried an uneasy air once the sun dipped low. It was on this walk, somewhere between 40 and 50 feet from the cabin door, that the air shifted. From the hidden side of the outhouse, close to a tree that was close to the wet ground, something massive stepped into view, and in that instant, every sound of the forest seemed to vanish. The figure was taller than him by at least a foot, maybe more, a looming presence only 30 feet away. He remembered staring in disbelief, his tongue tied, unable to make sense of what had just entered his world. Then it let out a sound, a low, forceful blast that struck him like a wave, something not just heard, but felt deep inside the body.
We believe that Sasquatches are probably moving about in kind of loose groups. So, in the kind of habitat they like to live in, they wouldn't be able to see the other individuals in their family groups. They would have to call for them, whether it's mating or socialization or feeding.
An invisible shock that rattled him to his bones and left him frozen with the realization that he was completely vulnerable. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but the calm voice inside reminded him that running meant death, for the creature could close the distance in seconds. So he stood there, locked in a silent stare with eyes that carried no whites, only deep, dark sockets that seemed bottomless. Its body was huge, like a giant wrestler made even larger, no neck, shoulders bulging, arms long and heavy, legs like tree trunks, its entire form covered in dark hair that glistened faintly in the fading light. The sheer size of it pressed into Sean's mind with the weight of something impossible yet undeniable. Its face was wet with a strange sheen, the cheekbones sprouted sharply like something carved from stone, the nose flat and wide with no proud bridge. Its brows were heavy and pressing down like a shadow, and the eyes were sunk deep as if hiding something that should not be seen. Yet in those eyes there was no emptiness. There was awareness, and to Sean, it felt like being stared at not by an animal, but by something that knew, something that studied, something that understood in a way that made the air heavy. It then lifted its head as if testing the world, sniffed the night with slow intent, the movement small but deliberate, and every detail of that moment burned itself into Sean's memory like a brand. Then it shifted, hardly more than a twitch, but enough for Sean's hand to slide to his pistol. But the instant he touched it, the creature made a sound that came low and heavy, a vibration starting with an M pressed through lips that did not belong to man. That sound rolled into Sean like a wave, a shock not of noise but of force, and in that moment it seemed to grow taller, stretching itself with a tense pull, standing erect as if preparing for something. Seeing this, Sean was filled with terror, his thoughts telling him that he would have to empty the weapon into its body, as this was the only way to end it without being torn apart in the dirt. But the thing looked away, turning its massive frame with a swing, its shoulders blocking its own jaw as it twisted, and then it was gone. It charged into the trees with a violent crack of twigs and branches snapping like bones, leaving a trail with brute force until only the violent shaking of branches was left.
Grizzled old woodsman named Bauman, who tells a tale of going into a secluded valley to trap beavers and other animals with two partners. Only one man got out. They saw a bipedal figure that stank really bad, leaving big footprints, and they shot at it, which is a bad idea. Don't shoot at a Bigfoot. They don't like it. They'll come for you.
Without wasting any time, Sean ran for the cabin, panicking, snatching a shotgun off the wall and loading the rifle as if to defend himself from the impossible. Every nerve was alive in that mad minute, the kind of fear no training could quiet, the kind of memory that never leaves. As chilling as Sean's story was, he is not the only person to have encountered the creature in the woods and lived to tell the story. The chilling tale of Barb. Ever since she was a child, Barb Shupe was fascinated with Sasquatch. The mystery around these elusive creatures ignited her curiosity, and she always hoped to encounter one herself. The first time she heard about the creature was an evening in the 1970s when her family went camping at Spirit Lake Campground near Mount St. Helens. The rangers gathered the kids around a bonfire and told scary tales about the wilderness and strange encounters, including the eerie story of Ape Canyon, where miners once reported attacks from strange ape men. When the rangers began the storytelling, Barb was hooked from the beginning, unlike her younger brother, who found the story too terrifying. Growing up in a time without the internet, she could only catch bits and pieces from occasional TV specials. Yet, the desire to encounter one stayed with her. As Barb got older, her curiosity about Sasquatch became more than a passing interest. She found herself drawn to the woods, seeking solitude and maybe, just maybe, a chance to uncover the truth behind the legends. But like many, due to no direct contact with the creature, she got frustrated and chose to believe that Sasquatch was just folklore. It wasn't until the early 1990s, when Barb first set foot on a trail near her cabin, that she stumbled onto something strange that defied her expectations. One spring day in April of 1992, Barb was walking along a logging road near her cabin when she noticed broken trees lining the path. Something about the snapped-off tops caught her attention, as if they hadn't fallen naturally. Curiosity drove her to step deeper into the woods, where she discovered something she couldn't ignore: a perfect footprint.
Oh, early April of '92, I found a couple of broken trees beside the logging road that got my attention. The tops had been snapped out of them. And so I was curious, and I stepped back into the woods a little bit to look at them a little closer, and I found a perfect footprint.
At that moment, Barb realized she was looking at something far from ordinary. In her mind, she tried her best to visualize how the creature had taken a step on uneven ground, causing its foot to slip. The print left behind was crystal clear, pressed deeply into the dirt. She could see how it had stepped between two trees, snapping their tops off, as if in frustration or warning. This discovery had her questioning everything she'd once assumed about Sasquatch. But even then, she thought it might have been just one creature passing through, never dreaming it might belong to a family of Sasquatches. For the next few years, she occasionally stumbled across odd signs and wondered if they were linked to Sasquatch. Yet, she would always brush these thoughts away, reasoning, if there were Sasquatches around here, I'd know about it. People would talk. Or so she thought. Then, in 2006, Barb experienced something even stranger that made her wonder if her cabin was closer to these creatures than she'd ever imagined. She was outside, trimming a stick she'd found while searching for her missing cat, when a big, black, furry object suddenly dropped from the top of a tree. It bounced off, hit the roof of her cabin, then disappeared from her view, leaving her shocked. When she looked for what had fallen, there was nothing but a stunned, fluffed-up chicken on the porch. Barb tried to rationalize it, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it might have been a young Sasquatch. While the thought seemed too wild to accept, she kept asking herself where its mother would be, since it was unlikely that the baby would be wandering alone. It wasn't until 2012 that her suspicions were confirmed. While watching a herd of elk near her cabin, Barb saw a large, dark figure trailing behind them. She knew at that moment what she'd seen years ago had indeed been a baby Sasquatch. The more time she spent in the woods, the more strange occurrences began to pile up. One evening, while out again searching for her missing cat, Barb heard something peculiar from the creek. A noise that began as an owl's hoo-hoo, but quickly dropped into a deep, menacing growl. She knew no bird could make a sound like that. Alone in the woods at night, the growl left her on edge, wondering just what might be watching her from the darkness. As the years went by, Barb started noticing other peculiar things. Rocks would be thrown near her, trees and branches arranged in odd ways, and piles of sticks would appear in the woods as if intentionally placed by something.
Piles of branches, and nowadays, now I know enough to know that these are what are considered structures and are related to the Sasquatch, but back then I didn't have any clue.
She even witnessed glowing orbs darting among the trees, yellow lights that bounced around like playful spirits. Though she initially dismissed these as spirits of forest animals, she later began to connect them to Sasquatch activity. But things got even more real. Barb soon came face to face with what she would later call the Cloaker event, a moment that forever changed her beliefs about Sasquatch. Barb and her friend Sandy had organized a campout for people interested in Sasquatch, attracting followers from her YouTube channel eager to experience the woods where Barb had so many encounters. One day, they took a group hike along a trail by her cabin. Barb had her camera ready but wasn't actively filming. As they studied, a fallen tree snapped in the middle, an odd sight. She suddenly spotted something about 80 feet from where they were standing. A black, triangular-shaped head appeared above the undergrowth, then took off running, all arms and legs covered in hair. It was gone before anyone else could react. But Barb wasn't the only one to witness something strange that day. A few hikers who had stayed back on the trail saw what looked like a small black monkey coming down a tree head first before it disappeared into the bushes. The sight of this small creature confirmed Barb's suspicion. There were indeed multiple Sasquatches in the area, possibly a family. Later that evening, she reviewed her camera footage, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature. What she saw on the screen, however, was unlike anything she'd ever expected. The figure was barely visible, shifting in and out as if it were cloaked. much like the creature from the Predator movies. The realization was stunning. Barb could hardly believe what she was seeing. "I'd seen Sasquatches vanish before," she recalled, "but I always found ways to rationalize it. This time, though, she had proof on camera, something she couldn't easily dismiss." She shared her footage with others, and they watched it on a larger screen, confirming that this was beyond normal explanation. For Barb, this revelation cracked open a new world of possibilities, forcing her to accept that Sasquatches might possess abilities that defied common understanding. From that moment, she realized the paranormal side of Sasquatch, was real. But the strangeness didn't end there.
Whenever we have an experience, it's not just that experience. There's so much more to it. When you sit back and you analyze it and think about what happened, the things that surround this experience gives you lessons, you know? It's not just that Sasquatch exists, it's that Sasquatch can do this and this and this.
Not long after, she joined a group campout in the Blue Mountains, an area known for mysterious happenings. During her stay, she saw eyes glowing in the darkness and felt strange energy, a sensation she later called being zapped or sizzled. She'd heard of others experiencing this phenomenon, but feeling it firsthand was a different and scary feeling altogether. At this point, Barb knew these creatures were around her, watching her, maybe even communicating with her in ways she didn't fully grasp. Returning from the Blue Mountains, Barb felt an odd mix of excitement and dread. She could no longer deny that the creatures were aware of her presence and capable of things that seemed supernatural. Despite her logical mind trying to reject these experiences, she could no longer ignore the reality of it. She still struggled with this duality, knowing they were there but battling the natural tendency of the brain to rationalize things. The woods had forever changed for her as she began seeing her surroundings with new eyes. Today, Barb regularly encounters signs of Sasquatch near her cabin. Rarely does a month go by without some indication of their presence. Sometimes she hears knocks echoing through the trees. Other times, a vocalization echoes in the distance, responding to her voice. Occasionally, they leave her gifts, small trinkets and stones, perhaps as gestures of acknowledgement. With all these signs that have been going on for years, Barb believes that none of these occurrences are random. They all seem deliberate, purposeful acts from these creatures. Reflecting on these years of encounters, Barb feels as if she's been taken down a path she never could have expected. The mystery and wonder of it all continue to unfold, as if she's only scratching the surface of something much larger than herself.